GTM has become programmatic. We're entering this kind of arms race of who can build the best machine. The more content you can make, the more experiments, the better targeting, ultimately is the more revenue, right? So I've spoken to about 100 companies now on their sort of GTM processes and really looked inside it. And from this, I've learned everyone's trying to build what we're calling a GTM engine. So I created this framework to evaluate all these companies I'm speaking to and put them on like this 6-step ladder. Hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a rough understanding of where you fit on this ladder. But just keep in mind, the version I'm going to talk about today is very overly simplified. I have a much more deep analysis with scores, metrics of each kind of function across sales, marketing, revenue, etc., which I'm going to go over a little bit more at the end, just to keep this a little bit more digestible. So let's start off at level 0. And I was thinking about the best way to explain this to not make it overly complicated. And I think the best way to sort of introduce you to a GTM engine and also have some sort of example where we're moving up the ladder is actually give like a real example. I'm going to remove the names and kind of abstract a little bit of the things away just to make it more simple. But for example, meet Bob. Okay, Bob right now is a Series A founder. He sells a B2B product. He has 2 plans, one which is self-service, which starts at $1,000 a month, and he has some sort of enterprise tier which starts at about $15,000 a month. On paper, because we're at level 0, he isn't using any AI currently. He's doing a lot of founder-led sales. So with that in mind, let's look at his funnel currently without any AI at all. So at the top of the funnel, he's doing a lot of X and LinkedIn content and a lot of outbound on those channels. They are also doing some regular events to target their ICP, maybe like once a month. And then from the outbound, he's either trying to send them to a landing page or book a demo so he can do a sales call. So at level 0, and realistically how most companies operate in this sort of setting, it's very random. Nothing's tracked. They're not using any AI tools. It's just kind of like, hey, this channel kind of seems to be working well, so let's invest more into it. But the annoying thing about that is Bob doesn't really have any understanding of like any patterns. He might use a very simple CRM to sort of track the deals, but he's not really updating it. Like, who's got time to update it? So that's level 0. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I think we're all very familiar. But that's Bob. Level 1 is assisted. So now we're moving up the ladder to level 1. So this is where Bob is starting to use tools for this individual process. So let's say Bob's feeling the pressure from all these sort of AI native guys on X. So he's trying to make his main flow, which currently is LinkedIn DMs with LinkedIn content, move a little bit up the ladder. So his process right now is he might have a warm intro, or he might see some sort of signal where someone on LinkedIn is actually posting, asking for his service. His flow might be he's going to research them. He's going to send them a DM based on that research. He's going to get a reply. He's going to send a landing page. If that works, he might schedule a call, do a sales demo, handle the objections on it, close the deal. At level 1, what he's probably doing is each one of these steps is he might be using an AI tool to kind of assist him in it. So to research the person, he might be using Perplexity. To write content, he might be using ChatGPT. To actually find the warm intro, he might be using some sort of signaling tool. So the really key thing at level 1 is kind of like going through each one of these processes and kind of dissecting it and kind of having a tool that kind of speeds up one of these sections or even helps him make better decisions when going into the next function of this process. So for example, he might have Firefly's AI on the sales call that takes the transcripts. When he next goes into the call, he knows when he does something wrong. But again, it's very manual. He isn't really doing that much to speed up his process and automate things. I think most companies might just stop here and think like, hey, we are investing into AI tools. Like all our employees are using ChatGPT and Perplexity to research people. But I think it's kind of a trap because I think it's so much more than this. And like at most, it's going to speed them up by 50%. And like, yeah, it's cool, but I think there's a long way to go up on the ladder. But one dangerous thing I want to keep in mind on this level 1 is some people might go the other way and try and over automate or use AI in the wrong place. So for example, with the ChatGPT DM, it might speed it up, but it also might actually hurt his outbound because it's making generic, not very good DMs, right? So I think a big part of moving up this ladder is you have to be moving up the ladder in ways that are attached to ROI. Because otherwise, you're really just going to ruin your brand. I know for me personally, if someone sells me like growth services or they're sending me a DM, it's just complete air slot. It's like, I don't really want to work with that company, right? And I think one really good example of this is a company, which I'm not going to say their name, but they make a really, really good tool, right? And they did such guerrilla generic marketing where they blasted it over a niche of people where I've tried this tool and it solves a problem that some of my friends are having. And when I said, hey, use this tool, they're like, oh no, it's just slop. I don't like the company. I actually had to sit down with them and say, hey, like this tool is really good. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like, I think consumers and especially B2B people are very conscious about not being AI slopped to. I think the general play here is to figure out which processes are working and try and scale it up with AI to be more efficient. But don't try and automate anything that you haven't had good results with. And that will require a lot of manual experimentation. No way about it. So moving up to level 2, Bob is starting to know which tools are working well, and it's handling more and more of the end-to-end workflow of each channel. So for example, he might be using custom agents, he might be using Clay's agents to do all the prospecting. He might have some other sequencing tool that's sent automatic DMs to them on LinkedIn. He might have some sort of AI landing page, which is understanding which customers are going to his page. So each part of the process has some sort of AI augmentation where it's helping the process, or we're taking data from that process where the sort of larger system can sort of understand what's happening in that channel. So for example, like I know we talked about outbound a lot, but a really big thing for B2B currently is events. So one process might be he's posting events, he needs to create content for that event, he needs to invite people to the event, he needs to do follow-up emails, right? So I think like most of that could be done by AI, but he needs to do it in a way where it needs to be connected to his CRM, he needs to be very targeted about who he wants to invite. So another example of this might be him building his personal brand. So he might have some sort of workflow where a feature is pushed, there's some sort of blog about that feature, and then he starts automating that content to go out to X, LinkedIn, etc. in some sort of personal brands process. But end to end, this process for him at this stage probably wouldn't be fully integrated. It'd probably be some sort of back and forth where it's going straight into his Notion or his CRM. He's kind of reviewing it, editing it, and kind of planning out his content calendar day by day. At this stage, they might have like 2 or 3 tools that are working really well, and they're starting to scale that up. But I think going on to the next stage, this is where they're going to hit their first real wall, right? Because I think to climb out of level 2, you really have to build some sort of context graph or some sort of database. So when you're trying new tools, when the tools are doing outputs, when you get results from LinkedIn, when you get results from outbound, where a new feature comes, you need some sort of way of making your data very AI ready. So when you sort of go to these tools or you're implementing agents, the agents have a very easy way to understand everything that's going on around your company and sort of translate that into GTM motions. I think there's a ton of people building context graph. I think it's a really deep topic, and I probably will do another video on it because I think there's new things coming out like GTM world models and stuff like that. But if you're interested in context graphs, feel free to let me know. But I think really the general play here with level 2 is finding these 2 to 3 channels that are working and really crank them up with AI and start to think about how you're sort of playing around with all this data, how you're tracking the results, measuring everything, because that's going to be really important as you go to level 3. So level 3 is owned. So Bob is doing really well with his LinkedIn content, his outbound, like it's semi-automated where there's workflows kind of for each part of that process. But I think going into level 3, he's implemented his context graph. So now he can start to look at the full funnel end to end. So I think at level 3, every single part of this process needs to have some sort of AI augmentation. So you look at the top of the funnel with the outbound, the content, anything else to do, and you look at the middle of the funnel with the events, the community, the email list, and you look at the bottom of the funnel with the sales growth. So every single part of this process, it needs to have an agent or a human that's accountable for it, where it can use that data to have some sort of bird's eye view about what's working at every single part of the process, where you're losing people, where you can upsell customers, etc. I think level 3 is really about ownership of each one of these channels, but also as well building off the context graph to really have a great understanding of what's working and what's not. And a great example for this is Bob might have found the content to outbound to etc. on LinkedIn, but he might have a head of growth now, which is just focusing 100% on doing his personal brand for him. He might have another person that's 100% focused on doing landing page for him, or he might just have agents that are constantly optimizing his landing page, and he's just knowing what the parameters of that are and having this bird's eye view about how to manage humans or agents on this sort of long horizon task. And I think this is where the augmentation thing becomes really interesting, because I think a lot of these GTM engines, a lot of moving up this ladder is building systems that really understand what they're good at and what they're not good at. So I know we talked about before about over automating, but I think another really key point here is the system knowing, okay, like I'm not good at writing DMs, or I'm not good at writing events, or I can't be in this event physically. So we went over automating things in level 2. I think at this stage, this sort of augmentation becomes really important because agents are really really good at things that have a lot of scale and a lot of repetition, anything to do with research, analysis, stuff like that. Humans are obviously very good at in-person stuff, writing very human copy, creating very organic content. So I think at this part of the system, you've really got to feel out exactly where tasks need to be offloaded to the humans in a way that the agents are going to measure and make the system even better. And I think getting out of this next stage, you really need to have this sort of command center or dashboard or kind of overview of everything that's going on, where you can see all the metrics, you can see what agents are working, you can see what humans are working. Like some people could do this in Sheets, Airtable, but I've seen some really cool custom builds as well. But the shorthand of this, every single metric needs to be tracked, every single person needs to have ownership, and you need to have a really deep understanding of your funnel end to end. And before we go any further, I actually do a newsletter where I break down the latest trends, research, and even build my own tools in GTM, marketing, and sales and engineering. Click the link below. First 5 people, I'm going to send out this free tool I've been working on that kind of analyzes your business and gives you all these great analytics. It can only be 5 because it's very expensive on the token side. So on level 4, Bob has everything owned, everything has set processes, there's workflows, everything's looking great, and the pieces are going to start triggering, right? So the sales transcripts go into Slack, objections become marketing content, close one data becomes targeting, event audience triggers flows, and this level 4 is connecting all these things and kind of having these dynamic workflows that kind of work in a loop, right? He still might have some channels that are more built out than others, but I'd say at least 50% of his stack is very, very connected. I think this is the level where I could confidently say someone has a GTM engine. I think before that, you kind of have a GTM engine with humans. I think anyone building anything before this is just really using AI tools. But I think a key thing in level 4 with having this connectivity is starting to work on a loop engineering. I think, again, this could be a whole other video in itself, but this is how do these sort of workflows kind of learn from the outputs that they're producing and do more things. So for example, for the LinkedIn content workflow, how does the system know when it's posting content? Is it reaching its ICP based on the content strategy that it implemented? If post 1, yes. If post 2, no. Do more content like post 1. Same thing for the sales. Is this ICP making sales? Yes. The system knows, okay, let's do more of this outbound. I don't want to get too technical on this one. Again, if you want me to make a video on this, I'm more than happy to. But I think to get to level 5, there's the last wall, and this is by far the hardest one, and it's kind of building off of loop engineering. But I think it's very sci-fi-esque, but it's very possible, and I do think people are generally building towards this. So I think everyone right now that's saying they build GTM on autopilot or anything like that, I kind of at this level 4, right? So they have these systems that are kind of working in loops, and they're kind of defining one part of the funnel or one part of the process where there's some sort of loop with limited human intervention. But I think the next frontier, which is orders of magnitude bigger than level 4, and dare I say very sci-fi-esque, is level 5, right? And level 5 sounds very out there, but I generally think this is going to be possible within a year or so. I know people working towards this. I'm very much, my research is focused towards this. And this is a system that is fully connected to the company, right? So it senses everything within the company, everything outside the company, and it has this world model, right? So if you make a push, it knows. If you say something in Slack, it knows. If a customer makes a slight comment, it knows. If someone says something in some random Discord outside, it knows. If there's a trend coming, it knows. So it has this really big world model. So that's one part of it, right? And the second part of it is it really acts upon this world model in a way where it runs experiments across every single channel, knows which KPI to optimize for at every stage of the funnel, and it's constantly learning, right? It's constantly learning, it's constantly optimizing, it's fully integrated. I still don't think it'll ever be 100% on autopilot, as some companies claim. It's very much a different dynamic, right? The human is steering this machine. It's got loads of different agents that optimize for very long periods of time. And what it's doing is it's asking the human, like, hey, can you do this event for me? Hey, can we target this? And it's basically becoming very much like how software engineering is working right now, where it's more so about the human reviewing and carrying out the actions of the machine versus vice versa. Bob isn't there yet, clearly. If he got to this level, I think the sales and marketing in this system becomes very quant-like. It's going to understand how much Bob's time's worth, how much the head of growth time's worth, and it's tying everything back to ROI within that context. And I think with this context in mind, looking down the ladder, I think in all honesty, most companies are probably about 1 to 3. There are some companies very rarely kind of on the cusp and like leaning towards level 4. But I think no matter where you are on the ladder, there's very clear benefits and there's very clear ROI on getting further up the ladder. I think every business right now that relies very much on B2B marketing and sales, which is not like very in-person based, should be moving up this ladder, right? Should be researching how to move up this ladder. Because even if you think you're fine at level 1, like how do you compete with something at level 4 and 5, right? It can run 100 times more experiments than you. You can post content to every single channel, right? You can take your LinkedIn content, optimize it for Reddit, optimize it for AI search. You can do that. It can give you more signals, right? It can understand, okay, this person at this time spent this much, so they're ready for a outbound message, right? So it's just orders of magnitude larger than being at level 1. I think really with some sort of deep analysis, you need to go through your whole marketing stack, evaluate each kind of channel, evaluate the ROI that's coming for it, which KPI each channel is going for. Same for sales, same for revenue. And there's going to be something currently where there needs to be some in-depth research by humans. But if you want to book a call with me and scope out where you're on the ladder, I have some links below on that. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, it really helps. And feel free to drop any comments. I'll try to respond to every single one. Thank you.